Okay, here's one. Several of you had some very interesting things to write about. A couple of you wrote your papers about. This one's by Billy Collins, and remember we did his introduction to poetry earlier in the semester. And Billy Collins is, well, pardon the oxymoron, a famous poet. He's not exactly a household name, but he does sell when he has a poetry book come out, it sells fairly well, and he's been on public radio and public television, and people do know his name. He probably makes a living at it. On turning 10, the whole idea of it makes me feel like I'm coming down with something worse than any stomach ache, or the headaches I get from reading in bad light, a kind of measles of the spirit, a mumps of the psyche, a disfiguring chicken pox of the soul. You tell me it's too early to be looking back, but that's because you've forgotten the perfect simplicity of being one, and the beautiful complexity introduced by two. But I can lie in my bed and remember every digit. At 4, I was an Arabian wizard. I could make myself invisible by drinking a glass of milk a certain way. At 7, I was a soldier. At 9, a prince. But now I am mostly at the window watching the late afternoon light. Back then it never fell so solemnly against the side of my tree house. And my bicycle never leaned against the garage as it does today. All the dark blue speed drained out of it. This is the beginning of sadness, I say to myself. As I walk through the universe in my sneakers, it is time to say goodbye to my imaginary friends. Time to turn the first big number. It seems only yesterday I used to believe there was nothing under my skin but light. If you cut me, I would shine. But now when I fall upon the sidewalks of life, I skin my knees. I bleed. So a class poem about a very classic and universal topic of growing up. Now I do think that Billy Collins and a lot of his poems are like this. There's a little bit of humor and a little bit of over-the-top quality, but it's also a very serious subject. Remember, a lot of jokes are half joking. There's always some seriousness in there as well. And the thought of a 10-year-old sort of sulking looking out the window about growing old is a little ridiculous, especially the older you get. However, he certainly captures the magic of childhood, right? When you did believe, maybe not in your heart, but why not? You believed at least a little bit that you could drink a glass of milk a certain way and make yourself invisible. You could imagine yourself a prince. You had imaginary friends. But for some reason, when we grow old and responsibility kicks in and something changes, I think biologically, this often happens when we hit puberty, there's a loss of that sort of innocence, maybe a loss of creativity. And it's sad, and it shouldn't be that way, frankly. And it can be avoided. There's no reason not to still have imaginary friends as long as you know that they are imaginary. And few things are sadder. Maybe there's no sadder image in all of the poems we've studied this semester than a bicycle, unridden, leaning against the garage. And I wheeled out my bicycle today. And I ride it. If the weather was nicer, I'd be on it this afternoon, but it's a little chilly. I'll ride it on my trainer here. But ride a bicycle. Have an imaginary friend if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 90. You can still be creative and fun, and man, it adds a lot to life. Being childlike is a good quality as an adult. Being childish is bad. But maintaining some sort of childlike whimsy, no matter what is going on in your life, think about it. Think about people you know who do that. They're probably people that you like. Now, oftentimes in the classroom we'll discuss at what age does this sort of happen. And probably it varies certainly, but a lot of people say teenagers, a lot of people say 18, 19, when you get out of high school and you probably have a job, and then college is very different. It's more personal and self-responsibility maybe than high school was for you. And maybe it varies on life circumstances, some sad ones. Maybe parents get a divorce. and you lose a certain childlike imagination and creativity. Times get more serious. I know when I went, I've talked to you before, I went to the Ghent school. I was with roughly the same 20 kids, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, same kids I knew from church, from Cub Scouts. And then I went to the big Chatham Middle School with 100 other kids, and it was a whole new crazy world. And there was a certain loss of simpleness there, and a lot changed for me between fourth and fifth grade. Of course, a lot hasn't changed. I ride my bicycle as much as possible. I have some very close imaginary friends. And, you just got to have fun with life. You got to be silly, and you guys see me doing that, and you need to do the same thing. You can be serious. You can be a serious person, and you can also be a fun and silly person. Both of those things can exist. In fact, you certainly don't want one without the other, and I think being a little silly helps you be a little serious when it's called for. So avoid this. Don't become the 10, 20, 30, 40-year-old solemnly looking out the window with your happiest days behind you. The happy days should be ahead, and you do that no matter what, no matter how bad your life might be. And right now, life's kind of bad for a lot of people. That doesn't mean you can't be smiling and happy. It doesn't mean you can't ride your bike, and it doesn't mean you can't joke around, even though it might be the most serious of times. Both are fine. You don't want one without the other.